What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Billy Goat channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing these 4 books that I read at the beginning of the year. These are all science fiction books. I guess I was just in the mood for science fiction. But anyway, for those of you that don't know, I rate these books on a scale of 1 to 5, and then I'll talk a little bit about each one and my general, thoughts and opinion. Let's go ahead and get started with book number 1, which is The Memory of Whiteness by Kim Stanley Robinson. So, Kim Stanley Robinson is one of my favorite authors, sci-fi authors out there. He usually writes about the near future, like a couple hundred years in the future, and kind of how humanity expands into the solar system. And he looks at things from kind of the social angles and how economics might change and how the culture might change and stuff like that. This one was one of his first books that he ever got published, and it actually takes place a lot farther in the future than most of his other books. It's in the year 3229, and basically humanity has colonized the entire solar system. And it's about this guy named Johannes Wright, who becomes the conductor of the Holy Welkin Orchestra. The orchestra is this giant musical instrument that contains like every instrument out there. So it's got like a piano, synthesizers, brass instruments, every kind of stringed instrument, percussion. It's like a one-man band kind of thing. And the conductor starts at Pluto, and he slowly makes his way towards the sun doing these concerts and stuff. So it's kind of an interesting premise for a story. The main crux of the whole plot and everything is that there's this secret society that is basically trying to stop the orchestra. They call it the Grand Tour, basically, as the orchestra is moving from the outer planets towards the sun. As far as what I thought about this book, it was very descriptive. It had a lot of cool moments where he's playing these concerts and the people are going crazy because it's like the most extreme wild music they've ever heard. It's like shattering their notion of what music can be and everything. The whole story is talking about the argument between free will and determinism. Do people really have the power to change the course of history, or is everything just on a set path and it's been that way since like the beginning of time? And that's kind of the main philosophical argument that's going on. And the problem is that the characters weren't really that developed. The main character, he's really just there to give like his philosophical thoughts. He has like one goal, right? That's just to get through this grand tour. And he doesn't really have much of a personality. There's some other characters in here that do have a little bit more of a personality and kind of, mildly funny moments. To me, it seems like this book was really just a way to kind of give opposing viewpoints on that argument about free will in the form of a novel. And so it wasn't really the most exciting read. It had a couple, I guess what you could call action scenes. Then again, Kim Stanley Robinson, he isn't like your typical sci-fi writer in that regard. Most of his books don't have crazy action scenes and like war and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It's probably my least favorite book of his that I've read so far. I mean, honestly, I could just kind of tell that this was one of his first books. He definitely tried to present, his idea of what the world or the human society would look like that far in the future, but it wasn't as fleshed out as some of his later books. And the ending, it was kind of a letdown ending. It felt very abrupt, and I kind of have ambivalent feelings. I don't really feel You know, it wasn't horrible, but definitely not one of my favorites. So 3 stars for this one. Next, we have Lock-In by John Scalzi. I have read a few of John Scalzi's books before. He's written this series called The Old Man's War, which is basically about old people being put into like fresh clone bodies to fight this war against some alien race. This is a standalone novel. It's definitely like a thriller. If you've ever read like Lee Child, like the Jack Reacher books, James Patterson, it's kind of in that vein, right? So like every chapter ends on a cliffhanger and you're like, oh my God, I just have to keep reading. This is so crazy. The idea behind this book, and it takes place in the near future, so think maybe 50 years from now or something. There's this disease that comes along called Hayden's disease, where if you catch it, you basically get locked into your body where you're fully conscious, but you're like paralyzed. Basically, they invent some way for these people that are locked in to transmit their consciousness into like a little robot version of themselves so they can still walk around as a robot and like interact in the world. So in addition to the people that don't have the Hayden's disease and the people that are locked in, there's also a group of people that caught Hayden's disease, but their body fought it off. And those people can become integrators, which means they can let the locked in people access their bodies and like control their bodies. And so this is a lot to explain, but basically it's like your typical murder mystery, vast conspiracy thriller story, but set in this really interesting situation where you can have someone who's one person who is an integrator that's being controlled in their mind by a different person. And so that opens up this whole different layer of like mystery and suspense, because you're like, wait, was this person acting as themselves, or were they acting as an integrator, and who was actually integrating with them and controlling them? I thought it was just really impressive that in such a short book he was able to create this whole world and all these cool like technologies and everything, and deliver a really satisfying, fast-paced thriller book. And also the character work was really strong. There's the main character, Chris Shane, who is suffering from Hayden's disease. He's locked in. He has a partner who used to be an integrator, and they have a really cool kind of dynamic between them. And then all the other like minor characters are also pretty well written. So overall, I just really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars, and this is kind of on a side note with my rating system. I was kind of going back and forth, like, I don't know if I want to give this 5 stars or 4 stars, because it's kind of hard to tell what the lasting impact of this book will be. Like, I don't know if I'm going to remember what even happened, months from now. But in the moment when I got done and like as I was reading it, it definitely had like, set piece after set piece, and really, it was definitely a page turner. So I just gave it 5 stars. I'm kind of like, if I enjoy it, I'm not going to think too hard about it, but it does make me wonder if maybe I'm giving out 5 stars a little bit too easily. And the reason I say that is because this book, Gnomon by Nick Harkaway, this is another 5-star book. It's like really 2 5-star books back to back. It just seems like I'm throwing these 5 stars out willy-nilly, but you know how they say never judge a book by its cover? I saw this book at the bookstore and I was like, I know I'm gonna like this book. There's just something about it, something about the green, the shark's fin here, I don't know. The interesting thing is that this book has a lot of elements similar to Lock-In. They're both set in the near future, and this book takes place in a future London where all of society is being monitored by this AI program called the Witness, and it's linked to a bunch of cameras everywhere and that are monitoring people's facial expressions and looking at their every move. It can prevent people from committing crimes or doing anything because it can basically like tell if you're even thinking about committing a crime. And so when the story starts, there's this inspector named Miliki Neath. That's the name. I don't know if I'm saying that right either. So this inspector gets this case to investigate where a woman was brought in for interrogation and she ends up dying in the middle of the interrogation, which isn't supposed to happen. The system is supposed to work perfectly and protect the citizens, and nothing bad's ever supposed to happen. So in order to do the investigation, she basically downloads the woman's brain, or downloads her memories, to see exactly what was going on as the lady was being interrogated. When the inspector starts playing back these memories, she enters these 4 separate realities of these different characters. So it's almost like the lady kind of had split personality or something. So again, without giving too much away, the story just goes completely off in a different direction. It kind of just hit all the different things that I like. I love books that have a story within a story, and this one had like 5 stories within a story. The inspector just keeps going deeper and deeper into this lady's memories and uncovering these different characters. One of them's like an alchemist in ancient Greece. One of them's a video game developer. They're from all these different time periods, and I just really enjoyed it. I like his writing style. There were a lot of cool twists and turns in this one. But yeah, I've read one other book by Nick Harkaway, and I remember I didn't really like it. It probably would have been like a 2-star or 3-star book. And then I read this one, and I really enjoyed this one. I was also wondering whether I wanted it to be 4 or 5 stars. I did have some issues with it, but I feel like all the strong points of the book kind of overshadowed the few things that I didn't like. I think he was trying to be a little too deep. It almost felt like too ambitious. Like he had all these threads that he was trying to connect, and then when you get to the end, it makes sense, but it also feels like he was trying to cram all this stuff into the very end, and it wasn't completely a graceful way to do it. Overall, there was still a great twist at the end, which I think with science fiction, you gotta have a great twist. There's gotta be something, it's like at this point, you've seen it all. You gotta be doing something original, and for me, originality gives you a lot of bonus points as far as my taste's concerned. So yeah, 5 stars for Gnomon. And finally, we have Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie. Another award-winning book. In the last segment, we had Salvage the Bones, which was a National Book Award winner. This one won the Hugo Award, the Nebula Award. In fact, there's a whole list of awards that this one won. And I remember, I've had this book for a while, but I remember seeing articles about it when it came out saying, this book really pushes boundaries and stuff. There were a lot of mentions of how Ann Leckie uses characters that are like genderless, or they can be referred to as either gender. So I'd be reading the book and there'd be a part where the character's like, I've got to go after this person, she said, as he adjusted his coat. So it's like using both pronouns, talking about the same person. When I read about this book before, it was making it sound like the gender bending stuff was like way more of a prominent part of the book. And I didn't, other than those mentions in the dialogue, it didn't really seem super noticeable. It would be like the character would kind of see someone and not be sure what pronouns to use, and then that was all that was really said about it. But yeah, this one, basically you had this AI mind that used to be in control of all these different people and, you know, a huge ship that has all that stripped away, and now they're just one person trying to get revenge on the person who caused that. I don't know. It's a cool universe, but I really expected it to be like a 5-star book, and it didn't quite get there for me. I'm not sure what it was. The ending, I thought it was a little bit rushed. It's like you go through the story, things are building, you know, the main character is getting closer and closer to finding this person, and then suddenly they found the person, and the ending is happening. It just seemed to kind of come out of nowhere. But overall, a good science fiction book. Really good dialogue, I found. The characters are really good. It's just that the situations and the settings, it kind of felt like I'd seen them before or read them before in some other book. Yeah, sometimes books just don't hit. I ended up giving it 4 stars, so it's not that I didn't like it. It's just that it didn't hit that 5-star point for me. There are 2 other books in this series, though, so I am kind of interested in seeing where the series would go from this point. Yeah, 4 stars for Ancillary Justice. Anyway, that's it for today's video. If you guys have any books that you're reading that you'd like to recommend, go ahead and drop a comment. I'm always looking for new authors and new books to read. Take it easy out there. I'll see you in the next video. Later.